Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we're going to take a look at a charger-loading Lee Enfield Mark I India pattern, which is perhaps one of the scarcest rifle conversions that the British ever did. Very, very few of these survive today. And what's interesting about it is that India approached the subject of updating and modifying their old long Lee rifles a bit differently than mainland England or mainland Great Britain. India is kind of an interesting case study in that for a long time, officers serving in India and the Indian Army in general were really looked down upon as, well, you know, they're the colonials and what could they possibly know? It's very uncouth and nobody civilized would ever go over there. When in reality, the Indian Army was a lot more active than the British Army. Troops in India were constantly fighting little border skirmishes, and British officers stationed in India were getting a lot more very good practical experience in the field than their hoity-toity counterparts who were sipping tea and eating crumpets, you know, on a tennis court back in England, feeling great about themselves. So there are a number of military advancements that were actually adopted by the Indian Army before the British Army. And in fact, this modification is, to my mind, one of those. So British, when they first introduced the Lee Enfield and Lee Metford rifles, these guns had detachable box magazines, but they did not have stripper clips. The stripper clip came later. It came about 1903 with the introduction of the short magazine Lee Enfield, and in its original form it was a mobile stripper clip guide. So one half was on the receiver, and the other half was on the bolt head, and you only actually had a functional stripper clip guide when the bolt was open, which is fine because that's the only time you can load cartridges into it anyway. But the British adopted that, and it would be, 1907, it'd be a couple more years before they adopted the solid charger bridge that we would recognize today off the SMLE. Well, the British didn't make any real effort to update their old long Lees to use stripper clips until they'd actually gotten that charger bridge. The Indian Army, on the other hand, recognized the potential of the faster charger loading system, and they wanted to update their long Lee rifles much, much earlier. Basically, as soon as the charger loading system was available, the Indians went and updated rifles to use it. Let me show you. Now, the Ishapore Arsenal made a variety of Lee Enfield rifles, including long Lees, and a lot of the guns that were converted there to this charger loading pattern were Ishapore-made guns. However, they also received a lot of guns from the British arsenals, and so this particular one is an Enfield manufactured gun. It was made in 1901, and we can see here that this originally was produced as a Lee Enfield Mark I Star rifle. If we take a look at the cartouches on the buttstock, we have a very faded London Mark I Star stamp, and we also have this IIG, which I believe is Imperial Indian or Indian Imperial Government marking, and that shows further its Indian provenance. Now, these rifles are not marked with a new designation here, or at least this one isn't, as the British CLLEs were. Now, to make this into a charger loading gun, they had to do a couple things. Obviously, they had to remachine the bolt head to add this sliding charger guide on. They had to rivet this additional piece onto the receiver. When the Mark I SMLE was introduced that had this charger guide from the factory, this side was actually integrated into the receiver. It was one continuous piece. If you're retrofitting this onto a gun, you have to make that extra little tab and rivet it onto the receiver there. So they did that. Going to bring back the original Lee Enfield here again for a moment. The original Lee Enfields had a full-length dust cover over the bolt. That is not compatible with the charger guide, so that had to go. You can see that it's been removed along with the lugs that would have held it onto the barrel. So that was removed in the process. In order to actually make use of this as a stripper clip guide, you open the bolt all the way, and then the two guides line up, and you can insert your stripper clip and charge 5 rounds quickly into the magazine. The rear sight here remained the same as on the original Lee Enfield rifles. It is still not windage adjustable. However, the Indian arsenals addressed that problem by actually mounting a windage adjustable dovetailed front sight into the front sight block. So that was added in 1908. The first rifles that were converted didn't have it. They went back and were updated a second time to get that front sight. The later conversions had it from the very beginning. And that really helps. Now, the way that they did this, they actually oversized the front sight. They would zero the rifles at the factory. They would then grind the sides flush, and you can see that little punch mark. They then staked the front sight in place. Actually, there's 3 little punch marks in there. They staked the front sight in place. So this was not to be used in the field to adjust the zero of the rifle. If it had to be re-zeroed, it would go back to the arsenal for that to happen. One extra interesting detail to point out here, this barrel is a commercial production BSA barrel. It appears, most likely, this rifle was rebarreled at the time that it was updated to the charger loading pattern, and it was probably updated using a barrel that was purchased from BSA on contract by the Indian government. In total, about 22,000 of these conversions were done between 1905 and 1909. At that point, the charger bridge became available, and they would go on to make a Mark II India Pattern charger loading Lee Enfield, which instead of having the mobile charger bridge had the fixed charger guide riveted directly onto the receiver. And they do a lot more of those. They did something like 53,000 of those right up until the beginning of World War I. So the India Pattern guns, they originally made both examples, and both types are extremely rare today. It's really cool that we actually have the scarcer of the two, which is, to my mind, the more interesting one, because this is a pattern that the British Army in the British Isles never actually adopted itself. So it's this really cool, sort of exotic, different side route off of the update path that was only done by the Indian Army. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.